Waiting. We're live!
Yay!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live show discussion for City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra, Clare. So, if you guys
welcome to the live discussion for City of Heavenly Fire by...
That's my other tablet.
No worries. I always forget to say, make sure you mute it. So hello, we are discussing City of Heavenly Fire today. If you don't know, I am hosting a read-along for the entire Shadowhunter Chronicles this year, and we are up to City of Heavenly Fire. So if you want to join in on the read-along, I have some information in the description of this video. You can also check out our lovely co-hosts here. But we will start off talking about our non-spoiler thoughts, just general thoughts in case any of you haven't read the book. And then we're going to dive into all of the spoilery goodness. So if you don't know, I'm Emma. I'm from the channel emmmabooks. I believe this is probably like my fourth time reading City of Heavenly Fire because I read The Mortal Instruments like so many times, books 1 through 5, before City of Heavenly Fire came out. So I think I've read it about 4 times now. Honestly, this wasn't my favorite reread, which is like so shocking because like I never have anything negative to say about these books. But there were just some parts that were just a little slow for me, but nonetheless, I like loved it. Like whenever I was like really into it, I couldn't stop reading, and I think it's such a wonderful conclusion. So Bridget, if you want to introduce yourself next.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Bridget, and I also have a booktube channel called Bridge-Em-Books, and this is my very first time ever reading anything from Cassandra Clare.
Yay!
So that's been really exciting. And after reading like both the Infernal Devices and the Mortal Instruments, I actually prefer the Mortal Instruments.
Nice.
And the conclusion to this series, in my opinion, was really, really satisfying. Like, it was everything that I wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of can agree with you on like the slow parts of it because it is a lot chunkier of a book than like the other ones in the series. So I did get that a little bit, but yeah, I just thought it was super, super satisfying. So yeah, that's all I have to say about it, I guess.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here to discuss your like very first initial thoughts with us. So Autumn, why don't you go next?
I'm Autumn, and this is my third time reading City of Heavenly Fire. And I agree with you, honestly, because this isn't my favorite time that I've read it. The first time was my favorite, and this is the book that took me the longest to read, this reread. And like, this is the first time that I've read them in order of publication, and it's so weird seeing how it like all blends together so perfectly, because I read them like 1 through 5, and then the Infernal Devices, and then City of Heavenly Fire twice. And but yeah, I love this series, and that's all I really have to say for non-spoiler things.
Oh, so glad you're here to discuss with us. And finally, we have Karina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karina, and this is my second time reading City of Heavenly Fire, and it is my absolute favorite Mortal Instruments book. I disagree with you, all of you. It's not, it's not slow at all. There's not a dull moment. My favorite Cassandra Clare book is actually Clockwork Princess, so I think that just makes reading this book that much more enjoyable because of all the Infernal Devices emotions. And I really wish I could just go back to the time where I hadn't read it. I want my memory erased so that I can experience it again for the first time. So I'm just really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so glad all of us are here. I think we're going to have a really great discussion today. So just so you guys know, we are going to dive into spoilers. It is spoiler central coming up. So if you have not read City of Heavenly Fire and don't want to know what happens, exit now, go read the book, and come back later because this will be live on my channel afterwards. But we're going to dive into our spoiler questions. If you are watching from the chat, you can definitely ask your questions there, bring up topics. We are just here to discuss this awesome book, and I'm really excited. So do any of my lovely co-hosts or anyone in the chat have anything just off the top of their head that they really want to talk about?
I want to talk about I think maybe my favorite scene in literature ever is Jocelyn's wedding. So that's
it's so heartwarming.
so
Oh my gosh.
amazing. From the moment that Clary first mentions that she sees Tessa, I started like squealing. And then every single sentence after that, I had to put it down and like continue squealing. It was really hard to get through. And can we just talk about Jem stealing church? Because Jem, his personality, you know, it's so reserved and he's so
Perfect.
Yes, he's always so calculated and he stole an entire cat. So I just thought that was amazing.
I remember being on like Cassie's Tumblr like before City of Heavenly Fire got released. And I remember looking at all the snippets, and one of the snippets she released was, "Did Brother Zachariah just steal our cat?" And so like I was like waiting for it at the end.
It's like one of those military homecoming videos with animals that I can't stop watching on YouTube. That's how I felt.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's a perfect way to describe it.
I also love during the wedding scene when they all go down to like the water together and they're all just hanging out as couples. I'm like, I wish I could be there. Like that'd be such a good moment to witness.
So sweet. Like it's just sweet and wholesome and wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a perfect ending.
Good. Yeah, I really like the epilogue. Like it ends off at like a really, really nice, really nice stopping point. So let's check out these questions. Just also a note about spoilers. We can talk about anything from the entire Mortal Instruments series and the entire Infernal Devices series in this live show. Don't talk about anything afterwards because we don't want to spoil anyone else. So I have this one question here. Where did it go? What did you think of Robert and Michael and Robert telling Alec about it? About how they were parabatai and Michael was in love with Robert.
I think that was like such a significant moment in Alex and Robert's relationship because he finally acknowledged that he made a huge mistake by, being judgmental of someone who was like Alec, and him like acknowledging that and telling him like, hey, I made this crucial mistake with my parabatai. I think it was just him saying, I accept you now. And I don't know. I just thought it was a really nice turning point, and it's definitely going to be different from this point in terms of their relationship.
Yeah, I also agree with that. I feel like in a parent-child relationship, it's really unique to get experiences where your parent is being so vulnerable to you. So I really liked that, how he was able to have that vulnerability and really open up. I feel like even though he confessed that he did something wrong, that allowed for some mending of the relationship. So I really like that too.
Yeah, I always really liked that scene because, like, when I read City of Heavenly Fire for the first time, I was, like, 17, so I wasn't the most critical reader, and I wasn't always examining people's motivations, so I was like, oh my gosh, it finally makes sense why he was so, upset about Alec's sexuality and didn't know how to express it, just because he was being faced with this mistake that he made so many years ago. Every single time he looked at his son, like, he was just reminded of how he treated his parabatai. And so I really liked that. And it also adds another layer of, taking in Jace as well. Like it adds so much more significance because it was like he was trying to repay him for, treating him so horribly. So I always really liked that point of their relationship. And I saw on Cassie's Tumblr today this really sweet photo, this drawing of Alec and then Jace and both Robert Lightwood and Magnus were like just all surrounding him, and it was very adorable.
Oh, I did.
So cute.
I've always been really close with like my parents. Mm-hmm. So when like characters in books don't get along with their parents, I don't really understand why. Mm-hmm. And like seeing that and him telling him why, it kind of like makes it make a lot more sense. And it cleared up a lot of things for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of Alec and his dad, one of my favorite scenes in the book is when they're going into Edom and they all have those dream sequences, mm-hmm. and we get to see all of their like desires. That was my favorite part of the book. I thought like that was so interesting, and yeah.
Yeah, I really like that you mentioned that because someone also, Veronica in the chat just said how like everyone's demon dream comes true. And it's sort of like by the end of the story, they've all been addressed in some way, you know, like Simon and Izzy, like they finally DTR and then they explain their relationship and they realize they're both in love with each other. And Clary gets to have a moment with her real brother that she never knew when Jonathan is dying, and she had like a good relationship with him in the dream, and Alec and his dad, and Jace confronting Sebastian. Like it just all comes full circle, and I really, really love it.
Yeah.
That was
anyone? You can go.
Oh, I was just gonna say that was such a perfect. I don't know. I loved seeing that everyone's dreams that they had. It was like that episode of Shadowhunters where they go to like an alternate universe, and it was just like a better executed version of that. It was it was really fun to see.
Yeah, it was so good. Autumn, were you going to say something?
Is anyone else here a huge Sizzy shipper?
Yes. Oh my
I've heard
God.
in a lot of the live shows, people don't like Sizzy, and I'm just like, I've always really liked Sizzy, and like I've just been upset that like in the show they don't like have them together, and you'll never get to see all of the moments between them because of the show. And I really like Simon and Isabelle together.
Yeah, I just love Sizzy because it is like the true definition of a slow burn romance. Like they really have gone through so much in so many different ways than the other couples, like starting from, you know, Simon, you know, obviously being attracted to her, but trying to use her to make Clary jealous, to when, you know, like they're in the fairy court and Isabella's like, I would kiss Simon, and then they're dating, and then they're seeing each other people and they hurt by each other, and just all of the stuff that they go through. It's like a lot, and it's really slow burn, and I really, really love them together.
It is really slow burn, and I think, sorry. Well, I think that's just something that makes the end part so frustrating because you backtrack so much, and it's so, it's like so frustrating to see that they don't have, well, I mean, they will eventually, they have to, but they just don't have that same chemistry at the end, and they have to start from scratch, and that's why I think it hurts so much what happened to Simon.
Yeah, I agree, because there's actually a question here talking about how much like Izzy loses and how sad it is, and I'm really upset that I can't find the marked page that I'm looking for now, but it makes me think back to what was it? There's a scene when it's kind of when Izzy and Simon are like talking about their relationship for the first time, and they're like really discussing it, and like they have this conversation where like one says like, you know, like, you'll break my heart, and then Simon's like, I could break your heart, or something like that. And like it foreshadows to the fact that like, you know, Simon is like, Izzy's the one that ends up being really hurt because Simon can't remember it. Oh my gosh, that ending is just like so painful.
Yeah, and I think one of the last bits of dialogue we get from Simon is like him saying, "You're a heartbreaker, Isabelle Lightwood," and I was just like, "Oh my gosh!"
Sweet. It's so sweet.
Well, on the positive side, they get to be cute again. Like, you know, the beginning, like flirting, cuting part. Cuting is not a word.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Sizzy moments is, I think it's in City of Fallen Angels. It's them, Simon telling her to try borscht because my family's Jewish.
Oh.
And like I was just like, I don't personally like borscht. It's really gross. But like I just thought it was so funny that Cassie influences that much into Simon being Jewish.
Yeah, I love it. I love that, you know, it really, like, his religion is definitely a core part of his character all throughout the series. Let's see. I have a question from Bobby Joe Walker. How do you feel about the introduction of the Dark Artifices characters? How do you guys feel about that?
I love Emma. I thought it was, I don't know, I thought it was so nice to see her so well interwoven into the story because we really get to know her. And the past, you know, like the Mortal Instruments started, we didn't know anything about Clary, and with the Infernal Devices, we didn't know anything about Tessa, but I feel like I know Emma, and that's going to make me like her so, like, I'm just so fond of her already, and her series hasn't even started. So,
yeah. I was going to
really
say
nice.
something similar because this is my very first time reading Cassie's books. And like I didn't know anything about the Dark Artifices, and so I was like, I don't know if I want to read like Lady Midnight. But then as I was like reading about Emma, I was like, oh, I'm like, what if the Dark Artifices are like follows Emma's like plot line? And then I read the synopsis and I was like, oh my gosh, now I have to read it, because like by the end of City of Heavenly Fire, I was so attached to her. And yeah, with the Infernal Devices, like you don't really get any background on Tessa or anything before you, in the earlier books, before you go into it. So I really liked that.
Yeah, you know, when I first read it, again, I was 17, I was very petty, and I was like, these people are taking away time from my favorite characters. I don't care about them. Like, I was very, very against the TDA characters the first time I read it. But definitely as an adult, I can really see the value in getting this background on their story, because there's so much nuance to it with, like, you know, Julian and Emma becoming parabatai, and the main reason that Emma wants to be parabatai is to stay in Los Angeles to get revenge for her family, but Julian doesn't do that. And like I believe it's Julian who's like a little hesitant at first, and so there's like so much in this story that is going to play into the Dark Artifices and whatnot, and I think it's a really cool experience that we like get to follow these characters from like age 12 to like 17 compared to like just like a short period of time.
Something that's really interesting to me is that the way it's set up is just so much darker than it was originally in the Mortal Instruments. So in the beginning, City of Bones, you have Clary and her mom disappears, you know, and she's driven, and the story is driven by her fear of something happening to her mom, or like her mom dying. But Emma, like right off the bat, both her parents have been murdered, and it's just like it's so much darker compared to the Mortal Instruments. So that's a really big contrast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting parallel.
When I first read them, I didn't like reading about Emma and Julian and anything, because I was just like, I just want to read about Clace and them in Edom and stuff. But having read The Dark Artifices, at least the first two, I like them a lot more, and I definitely viewed it a lot differently this time, and I paid a lot more attention than I did the first time.
Yeah, I definitely think with the more rereads, it definitely sticks more, and you see the value in it. Let's see. I have Sierra N asks, what did you think about the ending dealing with a cold piece and how Helen and Mark were considered possible traitors and stuff because of their lineage?
So, okay. So something I noticed the second time reading the book is that there's like this huge parallel between like our own history. Like I remember learning about the Treaty of Versailles, I think it was. And they said that the Germans, like it was all their fault. The war was all their fault. And they had to like demilitarize, and they had to like take all the blame for it. And that caused a lot of resentment. And that's exactly what they're doing to the fairies, like almost word for word. Or I don't know. I thought it was really interesting that they're creating like a sentiment that's like similar to like what happened before the Holocaust. So
yeah, it's like 100% allegorical to World War II, like 100%. I mean, you know, demilitarizing the fairies and like making them pay for all of the reparations, taking full blame for the war happening, like literally right out of the Treaty of Versailles.
And I thought it was so interesting that Magnus was the one that stood up and was like, this isn't right, because he's lived for like 400 years or whatever. Like, he's like, history is repeating itself, you guys. So I liked that touch too.
And also they're talking about, Cassie's talking about using an entire race as like a scapegoat. Like the way that they're treating Helen and Mark is how, you know, Germany was treating the Jewish people. Like it's just so, I don't know. I thought that was crazy that I didn't notice that the first time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's just like everything for the cold piece is so frustrating because, you know, like with Mark, remember like the consul like promised Emma and Julian that like they wouldn't give up looking for Mark, but she already knew that there was nothing that the Shadowhunters could do to get him away from the Wild Hunt. So like she made the promise, so it was like a loophole. And I'm like, damn, like she like really deceived those kids and manipulated them into doing what she wanted. Like I feel like Gia Penello has always been like a good figure, but in that moment I was like, she really is like, you know, the cunning consul that we associate with the Clave. Mm-hmm. You know, she's not an exception, which I think is really interesting.
Does anybody hate the Clave more than the real government?
I don't know.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to say, but there's such a mirror of all the bad things in our world and in their world as well. Let's see about some other questions. How do you guys feel about Clary and Jace in this book? Because I've always found it fascinatingly different than the first 5 books.
I thought they were a lot more mature and their relationship was a lot more developed and they had better communication. So it was a lot less frustrating to read their interactions because they would just talk to each other about things, which they didn't seem to do in the earlier books. So that was really nice. Also, I noticed that I was getting a lot of Twilight vibes, you know, like, oh, don't touch me, I'll hurt you. So that was fun.
I always love Clace in City of Heavenly Fire because it is like the one book where there isn't this forest tearing them apart. Like in the first 3 books, it's the fact that they're siblings. In the 4th book, it's because Jace is being possessed by Lilith. In the 5th book, it's because he's bound to Sebastian. And like they finally, like they're allowed to be together. They don't have any like problems in their relationship other than the fact that they can't kiss. You know what I mean? So like I love that like they're able to just be like happy with each other for once. Like, you know, they reached a point where Clary is just like stressing about what to get Jace for Christmas. Like that's adorable. I love it. And so I just love that like this is finally the book where like they can actually be together. Like there's this line from Simon. I don't know. I think it's either when they're like getting ready to go to Edom or it's when they're in Edom and he's like, they look like a team. And I just feel like City of Heavenly Fire is really the point on forward where Clary and Jace are like actually equals in this relationship and like they're 100% supportive and there for each other. And I just really love how much their relationship has developed.
Yeah, I also felt another moment where you could really see how their relationship matured was in that final scene with Sebastian when Jace is just like not making eye contact with Clary and there's this one like she has this moment of like inner monologue where she's like, wow, like this must be really hard for him to finally like let go. And I feel like that showed a lot of maturity in Jace specifically. Their relationship is just amazing.
I love them so much. Let's see. I had a great follow-up about the discussion of Clary. Just what do you guys think of Malec in this book? Because we talked about Susie, we talked about Clay.
Oh my god,
Malec is my favorite couple in this series. They are my favorite. I love them.
Well, I think there's like 2 couples that they're kind of. So there's Malec, right, who's perfect and amazing, and Alec. He has this huge like redemption arc in the story where like at first you're like really mad at him for what he did in the last book and eventually, you know, he earns it. He really earns being back with Magnus and he goes and he saves him and it's just like so satisfying. And then you compare that with like Jordan, who is kind of like, oh yeah, sorry that I turned you into a werewolf, and Maya's like, yeah, sure, so yeah, I think Alec really deserves to be happy with Magnus.
Yeah, I love Alec in this book. Like I when I think about it, like I really think about it, I think Alec has one of like my favorite character developments of all time because he's grown so much from City of Bones. And I feel like this was really like the peak of it. Because I love how he doesn't take the full blame for what happened between him and Magnus, as he shouldn't. You know, like there's this one moment, I think it's at the end when like they're starting to reconnect and Magnus says something like, well, you know, you shouldn't have tried to take away my immortality. And Alec is like, well, yes, I shouldn't have done that, but you also hid things from me and that's not fair. And so like he really stood his ground and made his case and was like, yes, I did wrong things. I acknowledge that and I'm sorry for that, but you have to acknowledge that you did wrong things too. And so I just love that he's like, he finally has the strength to say that. And I just feel like also from there, like their relationship is so tight and equal and it's so wonderful.
I love Katarina telling Magnus to go after Alec. Like
so sweet.
She just like tells him like you're being stupid.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, Tessa did it. You can do it too.
Yeah, it's just really, really sweet. I love them together. They've been through so many different struggles. And they come out just like so wonderful together. I love it. And so, as we're on the topic of relationships, Krista asks, what about the relationship between Sebastian and the Seelie Queen?
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
That was like Voldemort and Dolores Umbridge in bed together.
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
It's just the worst.
Oh, my God.
I forgot how everyone got like abducted. I knew that they did because I read them in high school, and I forgot like how it happened. And then I remembered that the Meliorn, that's his name, Meliorn like sets them up and then takes them. And I was just like, oh yeah, like I got like a click in my brain, and I was like, oh no, don't go.
Yeah, I was so like shooketh to the core when they were in bed together. I was like, oh my God. Honestly, it's so funny to me though, because that really makes me think of like, it just makes me think of like Sebastian's sexual history because he was like raised by Valentine. So like, at what point did he become confident enough to seduce the Queen of Fairy? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, why would you do that? Why? I was just like, why? Ew. Like the whole time I was like, why?
It's so strange because I feel like I feel like it just really shows the disconnect from humanity that the both of them have, because like, you know, there's so many political alliances and stuff in movies and in real life, but they don't sleep together. And I just feel like the casualness, but like the politicalness of their dynamic is like so weird and like could only exist for them, you know?
Yeah. Do you think it was like a political thing that came first that led to them sleeping together? Or was it like, oh, I find you attractive, let's like form a political alliance because we're sleeping together? Like,
I feel like it was a political thing, and I personally, because I feel like they're both just so much about power, like they're power-driven characters. And I feel like they're like, oh, like we'll have a political alliance and have benefits. So.
Yeah.
I don't think the Seelie Queen is like dumb enough to just be like blindly seduced. She knew what she was getting into.
Totally.
Yeah,
and she thought he was
cunning.
beautiful. And so she's like, I'll just like do what I was going to do anyways and get benefits of it. She wanted to win. She didn't go in blindly at all.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I just always thought it was so fascinating. So interesting to me.
so gross.
And gross, yeah. Fascinating and gross.
Not as gross as when you hear Sebastian, whenever he talks about Clary, I just like shrivel. I'm like, oh no, please make it stop.
So gross.
I know that Sebastian is one of your favorite villains, Emma. But like, I'm just, because I rereading this and like reading all the incest things that he says, and it's just like, how? Like, I'm not really sure, like, the appeal to, because you're not the only one. Everyone loves Sebastian. Can you explain that?
Yeah. I can obviously only speak for myself, but I just think that Sebastian's story arc in general is so fascinating because someone mentioned it in the chat at the very beginning of the live show, is that like he never had another choice in life. He never had the opportunity to be good. Valentine took that away from him before he was even born. And so he really is a product of what Valentine made him, and his true self, like we will never know like what Jonathan Morgenstern was actually like, even if he was raised by Valentine, like what does that mean? And so I think the fact that there were so many different potential routes for his character arc, and he was only allowed one specific path, is really fascinating to me. And I think that just plays into like all the incesty stuff. Like obviously it's gross and it's so uncomfortable to read. I feel like my stomach's being stabbed with knives when I read it. But it's because he is so far detached from humanity and just from being a normal Shadowhunter that he doesn't even recognize that this stuff is gross. He feels he's entitled to it and that. And so I love his motivations, and I love the potential that his character could have gone and the way it gone. And I just think it's really fascinating. It's not like, I don't think he's like, oh, my little precious Sebastian baby. But I just think he's a really great villain, and I think his character arc is fascinating. But I totally understand why people are like, he is just too evil, and like there's nothing redeemable about him at all. Like I totally get it.
Detestable, but I feel like that what makes him like such a great villain is because he's so like hateable.
Yeah, totally.
Well, he is, but Jonathan, at the end, when it is Jonathan, it was shocking to me because I actually felt for him, and yeah, that was really interesting to see. Kind of sad.
It was sad. It made me think like what I would do if I was in like Clary's shoes, like if I would choose to forgive or not. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I always find it interesting, Clary's thoughts on Jonathan, because like she doesn't know him, so it's like, how can I forgive you for what Sebastian did when you're an entirely different person? And like it makes it so difficult for her to be like, well, like I know he had to die, there was no way for us to stop him, there was nothing good left in him, and so it's just so good. I love it. But yeah, I just I think it's so interesting, her relationship with Jonathan, not only Sebastian.
I don't think he necessarily is like totally attracted to Clary. I just think he knows that he wants to own her.
Yeah.
So that's a way of owning her. And so like I don't think he really only sees it that way. He's like, if I can do this, then like I can do whatever I want to you. He wants to own her, not necessarily like be her boyfriend. I don't think he's actually like attracted to her completely. I think he just wants to find a way to 100% like completely own her, and like you said, he isn't really human, so he doesn't see how that's wrong.
Yeah, well, exactly.
He did. Yeah, sorry.
No, go.
I was gonna say he did want to rule hell with her, so that's kind of romantic.
See, I think with Sebastian, it's like, like his like wanting to like kiss and like have sex with Clare, like that's all. I don't believe that's rooted in sexual desire. I think honestly, like the thought of Sebastian having sexual desire is just weird to me, because he just doesn't seem like he ever does anything for pleasure. Like it always has a purpose, and so that really just
like Voldemort.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the symbolic nature of Clary, of like this person that they share the same bloodline, and like she, like her wanting to be there with him and wanting to watch him and believing in what he believes in, like that's all of his self-validation. And I think that's really what draws him to her, because for him that she's the only person that can provide that to him, and that's why he wants it and feels he is entitled to it.
What's the point of having everything if there's not someone to like show it to?
Yeah, I think that's like literally like a quote of the book. Let's see. What did you guys think about Raphael's death from Cecilia? So a lot of feelings.
Yeah, so I don't really like Raphael, and I know that he did do things at the end that kind of redeemed his character, but I don't think it was enough. Like I know he has a tortured past, and there's a lot about him that I don't understand, and I feel like I just don't understand him fully. But yeah, like he was always trying to kill Simon, which was very annoying to me. So like I don't know, I didn't really feel very fazed by his death.
I can agree. Definitely the first time I read it, I also like was like, okay, like who's Raphael? Like whatever. But yeah, definitely as an adult, I do see more in his character, but I also like he just isn't very likable to me. And I think especially in City of Bones, like not just City of Bones, in the Mortal Instruments, his character isn't given a lot of development, like on the page, a lot of it is like woven through like the pages of all of the books and novellas and stuff. So it's hard. I feel like especially like it's hard when this first came out. It's hard to like really feel an attachment to Raphael. But I just like the moment when he gives Simon like the drugged blood, and Simon is that's a whole nother funny scene. But when like he confronts him and like Raphael's like just at the edge of the sunlight and he's like, you don't hate me, you're jealous, or something like that. And so I think that's a really interesting part of his relationship with Simon, is because like, you know, it's not fueled by Simon being abnormal or being a threat to vampires. It's because Raphael wants what Simon has.
And
Can we talk about drunk Simon?
What were you saying?
I said, can we talk about drunk Simon? That was amazing.
That was hilarious.
I will never forget when Robert Lightwood holds up the cross and Simon just plucks it up and throws it. It's like wrong religion.
What does Alex say? Like, oh, are you guys caroling?
So funny. It's so funny.
For being like one of the darkest books, I think it's one of like the most comedic, because they needed to alleviate all of the darkness.
Yeah, there's so much good comic relief in this book.
That was something I noticed a lot. I would be like really tense at the edge of my seat, super worried for all the characters, and then I would just burst out laughing because of something they said. Because all the like dark moments are really contrasted by really funny things. So
yeah, like all of Alec and Edom with the like, why can't straight people control themselves, and the whole pie bit. Like he's just so funny.
Oh my god, that's my favorite.
I laughed out loud when Alec looks in on Simon and Izzy kissing, and the words in the book are like in all caps, and oh my gosh, it just killed me.
It's so funny.
Well, the fact that he does it more than once, I think is amazing.
Especially.
Yeah.
It seems that him and Magnus, one thing in their relationship, they both walk in on people a lot.
Oh.
One of my favorite lines is from Jace when like him and Clary are talking, and she's talking about like Emma's crush on him, and they're talking about like, it looks like you're like the Shadowhunter for like Shadowhunter Weekly or something, and he was like, they said the pictures would be tasteful, and she's like, as long as there's a strategically placed seraph blade.
Oh my god, that's so
like during the wedding scene when they make the joke about how hot Brother Zachariah is, about the calendar. I thought that was really funny too.
Oh, I love this comment from Cecilia. Can we just talk about how Jace literally brought a condom to hell? Like, I love that.
God.
I love that.
Always be prepared.
I remember I made a Shadowhunter Vine compilation for a video once, and the concept was like packing for Edom. So Claire was like, Jace, we're leaving 2 minutes, get ready. And so on the table, it was a pack of condoms and a seraph blade, and Jace was like, and so he grabs the condoms and leaves the sword at home. It was funny if you saw it, but yeah, I just love that. Like, that.
It was so funny because you know he was thinking about it like right before they left, like, maybe we'll have sex there. I don't know.
It was like maybe being in hell cancels out the heavenly fire, so it won't affect her.
Yeah.
This once in a lifetime opportunity to have sex in hell.
Well, I feel like Jace is the kind of person who just takes them everywhere he goes, you know?
Very true.
Yeah,
He's probably already in
probably.
he's already in his pants.
That's true. That could be true too.
Well, I don't know. I think maybe like when Cassie was writing it, she's like, you know, I can't not put safe sex in the book. So then it just ended up being this hilarious thing that is just super out of nowhere.
It's so funny. I love it. I love it so much.
She's like,
So
I have to be a good role model.
I did have something that I wanted to bring up with you guys. I wanted to talk about the heavenly fire, specifically how with Gem. So we learned that like the heavenly fire essentially just like burns out the evil from your body. And when Gem is burned by the fire, he turns back into a shadow hunter. So, and I know that it like takes out the Yingfen in his body, but like, does being a silent brother, is that some sort of evil that is it being a silent brother evil? That's my question.
That's an interesting perspective. I don't think I've ever thought of it that way before.
That thought has never even crossed my mind.
I think
Yeah, me either.
thought would be that possibly being a silent brother in Gem was so tied to the Yin Fen because he wasn't like a, he didn't have the same effects as a silent brother. Like there were things that were different about him, and that was because of the Yin Fen. So it's possible that like the Yin Fen was so entwined with him being a silent brother that they came together. That would be my assumption about it.
I think that's the only thing that makes sense because I was like, is she trying to say that silent brothers are evil when they've been like helping us this entire time? I thought that was really interesting how it worked on him.
Yeah, I can totally see why you would make the connection between the two. I think what I love about the Heavenly Fire in this book, in City of Heavenly Fire, is because the rune that Clare uses to take fire out of Jace is the one she saw in City of Bones. I like still can't get over it. It's so dorky, but I'm like, I can't believe like it went back to the first book when this rune keeps coming up and it never is like explained until that. I love it.
I remember reading it for the first time and just wondering like, okay, I can't wait to find out what this rune means. And then by the time I actually found out, I had forgotten that it was a question.
This is my first time reading it. For a second, I'm like, what are they talking about? But like now I like kind of remember. It's like way back in my memory.
Yeah, it's when she's when they're falling off the roof of the Demore when they're on the bike and Clary sees the two wings connected by a bar, and then she later realizes that it's the hilt to a sword. I'm like, so good. So good.
I think it's like,
it so much.
Is that the first rune she ever sees, like in a vision?
I think so.
Yeah, I just had that thought. I was like, is that the first time she sees anything?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the first one because the only time she like experiments, like the only other time that happens in the first book, I believe, her like seeing new runes is when she takes the mortal cup or the teacup thing, when she like actually experiments with it, but that came before. So I do think it's the first.
The amount of planning that Cassandra Clare did for these books, like every single little detail that you thought was not relevant in the beginning of the book somehow comes out in the end of the books and other series, and they're all just like perfectly weaved together. It's amazing.
So intricate.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of a genius.
Kind of. So Michaela says, why is Maureen so powerful? Camille isn't dead, okay? She's not dead.
She's not. She's gonna be in Queen of Air and Darkness. I guarantee it.
She's not dead.
I don't know.
Am I the only one that's like, why can this little 13 newborn, like 4-week-old vampire can kill this
against the oldest vampire we know?
I don't believe it. She's not dead.
I feel like Maureen would be perfect for like a horror movie because she's so young. She's just like this little girl serial killer. Like she kind of terrifies me, but she's also kind of funny.
Oh, she's so creepy. I love it.
She's the creepiest.
The pirate costume for Simon.
Oh God, it makes me so uncomfortable.
And when Isabelle sees him and is like, "What are you wearing?"
And then they
has
do
to
that
wear
like
Alec's clothes.
role play thing. That was funny.
Lord Montgomery.
So funny. I love it. Am I the only one that doesn't believe that Camille is dead? Because like I just don't.
Oh no, I for real think that she's gonna be in Queen of Air and Darkness.
Like,
I didn't know that was a theory. I just accepted that she was.
Me too.
I refuse. Like, I'm gonna be so disappointed if she's.
If you don't see a body, they're not dead.
Exactly. Like, what did we learn with Sebastian? If you don't see a body, he's not dead.
But we did see Sebastian's body.
Oh. No, but he washed up on the. Lakeland washed him away before the Shadowhunters could retrieve him to burn him. And so that's when Lilith. So technically, no body turned up. Not dead.
I don't know how book 3 was ever going to be the end.
I know. Look at where we are now. Oh my gosh. Let's see what other questions we have. Oh, I love City of Holy Fire so much.
Such a good book.
We didn't. How are we? We didn't talk about Simon's memories being erased. We talked about how it was easy, but we didn't talk about Simon's memories being erased.
Oh
But
my
what are
god,
your
I didn't
thoughts?
cry. I didn't cry the first few times, but I cried this time for some reason.
It hurts me.
My favorite part is when Izzy looks at the band poster and his band's name is The Mortal Instruments. I was like, holy crap.
I just
Full circle.
I need
Yeah.
to know how long this has been planned for.
Oh my god, I actually had that thought the first time I read them before City of Heavenly Fire was out. I was like, because he always renamed his band, and I was like, The Mortal Instruments kind of sounds like a band name, and I like totally like wrote it off.
Really? That's so
My little
funny.
14-year-old self.
See, what interests me about it is because like the whole band name thing goes back and forth for like all of the books. Like, you know, it's like
Yeah.
a constant thing up until like City of Lost Souls or whatever. But like Cassie, I went to her event for Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, which is the novella series that takes place after City of Heavenly Fire. And she was saying how she like was writing with all of her friends who were writing like a book with her or something, like writing City of Heavenly Fire. They were like on a writing retreat, and she comes down to breakfast one day and it's like, I think I have to kill Simon. So like Simon almost died. And so I'm like, oh, is it really like just convenient that the Mortal Instrument sounds like a band name? Because she almost killed him. You know, like how long was this a thing for? Yeah, Simon almost died.
Oh my god.
Who were those friends that talked her out of that?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she was like, they all talked me out of it. They're like, oh, no, you can't do this.
No,
I need to send them
I'd
a
be
thank
so
you.
done after that.
So many people would have been upset if Simon died.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine it. I always find it so interesting because like his whole story arc is like a never-ending cycle of he's always on the outside of being captured. Yes, he's always kidnapped. But like I find it so interesting that like he's always been on the outside of the Shadowhunters. Like he's a mundane and then he's a downworlder and then he can't remember them. Like he's a mundane again. And so I just always find it interesting that he's always on the outside of the world, but then at the end he's on the outside of his friend group because he doesn't remember them. So I just always found that parallel really interesting. That like his whole thing is just that like he never fits in, and then finally at the end he's given the chance to, you know, be a true part of this family that, you know, and be more deeply connected to them.
One of my favorite parts is when Simon helps them with the plan in Edom, and he brings in Dungeons and Dragons.
Dragons, yes.
Yeah.
And then he's like, that's a trap.
I think it's oh yeah, when he's like trying to tell them like this is clearly like a bad idea, don't do it, and Jace is like, no, I'm doing it anyways. And then,
oh my god, Jace going for that like saber thing or whatever it is. Yeah. Oh my god, the first time I read that I was like, you're so dumb. Have you obviously he's not seen any movie ever.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite Simon moments in this book is when he drinks Alec's blood, and then afterwards he was like, that was kind of sexy. And then Alec's like, no, definitely not sexy.
It was a little sexy. I had some feelings. You feel free to agonize about that in your free time.
Yeah.
I do this thing where I'll take like Snapchats of the book pages when I see something funny, and I'll like underline them with the different colors for each person, and that's one of them. And I have them like a bunch of like book pages just saved on my Snapchat. And I like how Jay says when they were like, he's like, you could feed on us. He's like, I'm not gonna. He's like, yeah, it was a little homoerotic, but you have to like, survive.
Yeah.
I love how he never brings blood anywhere. I feel like Clary at like 3-4 different times throughout the book, she's just like, you haven't had any food, have you? And he's just like, no. And that always gets him into trouble. So why can't he? He needs to like pack. He's a vampire. He's been a vampire for a long time and he's still not used to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it probably is his resistance to just being a vampire, because in the however many months he was a vampire, he never like really accepted it. And so I think a lot of it probably had to do with the fact that like he was, you know, whether consciously or unconsciously, like, you know, if I drink that, then I'm a vampire. And so I'm going to hold off. Like, I don't need it.
Especially with the background of his family and being like so horribly rejected by his mom. Like, of course he wouldn't want to accept that part of himself.
Yeah, definitely. I also just thought of another really interesting thing about Simon, about how in City of Bones, he's the one that saves Clary, Jace, Alec, and Isabelle by shooting out the light in City of Bones. So he sees them for the first time, and then he saves them at the end.
Aww.
Which I'm like, my baby, he's such a hero.
Another thing that I noticed this read through is that in City of Bones, when he's like first finding out about the Shadowhunters and stuff, he asks how to become a Shadowhunter and if humans can do it. And then Jace is just like, yeah, but you would like die if you decided. And now he's going to.
Yeah, I also love like I think Autumn, you mentioned it when like Simon is like suggesting that they like steal the guards' gear to get into the like where Sebastian is, and like Jace is the one to back up Simon, and Jace and Simon's just like, what? Like me? Are you?
Jace and Simon are like my bro TP.
And they're so cute. I love it.
The mango scene is my favorite scene in the whole series. So.
Yeah, they have a cute little resistance towards their bromance. I love it. Let's see what other topics we have, because there's like so much in this hefty book. There's so much.
I grabbed mine, but it's on the bottom.
Let's see. Oh, you know what I love about Magnus and Alec? That Magnus writes down like stories from his past to give to him.
Oh,
so that you do it, and it's like an allusion to the Bane Chronicles, which is the next book that we're reading for the readathon. That's all about Magnus. Like he wrote the Bane Chronicles.
That's what I was wondering. He hands him like the notebook that he hands him is the Bane Chronicles, right? Like we get to read it. Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah, that was really nice.
Does it, in the Bane Chronicles, I'm just curious, does it say, like, Dear Malec in the beginning? Or not Malec, Alec?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
That'd be so cute, though.
Yeah, that'd be adorable. But yeah, he, like, wrote the Bane Chronicles for Alec, which is so cute. Also, I just passed a really cute moment between Izzy and Clary in the book, where Clary's like, through all the bad stuff that we've been through, like, I gained you through this, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm like, they're so cute. I love.
Yeah, they had a really nice development, because I remember the first book, Clary was super like jealous of Izzy all the time, and she really didn't like her. And now they're like best friends, and they have like the best like girl romance. So it's great.
It's a really big comparison from 3 books before, Izzy telling her that she hopes that her and her whole family move away from her.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, that's crazy. Oh, I just
my heart like stopped when I read Izzy saying that though. The first time.
That really hurt me in City of Glass, yeah. Oh, I just found another interesting. There's so much foreshadowing to Simon's future in City of Family Fire. It's really weird. It's when again, when they're talking about the gear that they have, the red gear that they're going to put on to infiltrate Sebastian's fortress. And Clary's looking at Simon in the gear, and it's like she had never imagined Simon in gear. And then he becomes a Shadowhunter. I'm like, there really is so much foreshadowing towards Simon's end in this book. It's wild. Wild. Oh, what did you guys think about Jordan's death? We didn't talk about Jordan, or Maya for that matter.
Oh, okay. So I think I mentioned this before, but I don't really feel like they should have been together. Because I really don't feel like he redeemed himself enough. Like he ruined her life. He took her life from her and made her a werewolf. And so the fact that she confesses after he died that she wanted to break up with him, like she's not like, like making him like a saint. Like people really idealize people after they die. And Maya didn't do that. And I thought that was so interesting to see, because it was nice. Like I didn't think he should have been back together with Maya at all.
I've always thought it was weird. I thought that like they just put Maya and Jordan together so that way they would get her away from Simon. I never liked Maya though. I still don't really. I don't get the point of her.
My thing with Maya and Jordan is that like I fully understand that like Jordan, I think he's definitely a different person, and I have no doubt that he would treat Maya the way that she should have always been treated if they were together, but that also doesn't make up for like everything he did. And I also have this feeling where I'm like, I just feel like we can't forgive him yet because we haven't really seen anything. And I know that Cassie Clare has like received some flack for like making an abuse victim go back to her abuser, but I've always seen it as a person returning to their abuser, which a lot of victims of domestic violence do, but then showing like the awareness of the situation afterwards, where she's able to say like, I felt that he was just wanted to be with me for him to feel better and to feel like he was forgiven, but like that's not, like I'm worth more than that. I always really liked that, you know, through all of the conflicting feelings that Maya's had about Jordan, I always really liked the fact that she was able to like see clearly in the end and acknowledge that, you know, this wasn't okay for her. This was still toxic and like it wasn't right for her to be with him, and she had every intention of doing so. But I also like that, like, you know, she's like, I feel bad that like he died thinking that I loved him, and that's not fair because that was a lie. And then Bad is like, well, you know, to die knowing someone loved or thinking someone loves you, like, isn't that bad? And so like I always really like that part of their ending where it's like, you know, Maya comes out on top and she knows her worth and whatnot, but also like Jordan was able to die with some happiness, feeling like he was forgiven. And even if it wasn't true, it still matters to him.
Yeah, I had never thought about it that way before, because when I was reading this for the first time, I was kind of not satisfied after Jordan died, because I felt like there wasn't any closure to the relationship. Like I really wanted Maya to like say what she had to say and break up with him. So, but I love your point. Like that's so true. But at the time when I was reading it, I'm like, I don't feel like there's any resolution or closure here, but yeah, I
remember like when I was 17, I like really like did not like Maya for like lying to Jordan and stuff. But listen, I was really petty when I was 17. Okay, if it didn't concern Jace, I wasn't interested. All right, let's just get that out of the way.
I was totally a petty reader when I was young too.
Yeah. But I also like I like really like hated Maya for like, oh, she wanted to break up with Jordan and before he died. Like that's so shitty of her. Like he did so much to get her back. Like I remember taking his side at first, and now I'm an adult and I'm like a feminist. I'm like,
she should have broken up with him.
Yeah. Sorry you didn't get to say while he was alive, but like you go girl. I also I do just feel weird. Like I feel like her and Bat like getting back together was just like out of place a little bit. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially because I feel like we don't know very much about that.
Yeah,
so
we know nothing about it.
Kind of like superfluous.
Well, you were gonna say something, Karina.
Yeah. Another thing is that like Jordan's death was sad. But it was sad because Simon was sad. I felt so bad.
Oh my god.
And that was like the only like emotion I felt. I'm like, oh, poor Simon. He's gonna be so upset. And then he was so upset, and it was worse. So yeah.
Wow. I feel like everyone forgets about how, myself included, forgets about how Simon feels about Jordan's death. Damn. Yeah. You just hit me with a whole nother wave of sadness, man.
You're welcome.
So sad. Wow. Yeah. All right. Let's see if we can take maybe one more question, or if you guys have one more topic that we want to discuss before we head on out. Do you guys have anything specific that you wanted to say to close out?
I would like to take a question.
Oh yeah, a question would be good.
Oh no,
I have something
we
really
can talk
small.
about two things.
Okay, I have something really, really small, and it's kind of random, but I just wanted to tell you about it. I noticed a lot of parallels with Harry Potter for some reason. So like with the two swords, you know, like the sister swords, and Sebastian has one and Clary has one. It's like the wands, you know, like the sister wands. And then when Sebastian like sends, I don't even know what his name was, one of the Darkened, and he's like, oh, you have to give me Clary in 2 days or everyone dies. It was like the Battle of Hogwarts when Voldemort's like asking the Forbidden Forest. And then the last thing, which is from Fantastic Beasts, is when Jacob gets his memory erased and they find him and he has a bakery and he's making all these little like,
oh my god, you're so true.
Of the little like you know, the magical creatures, and that was like Simon with the moral instruments
That's
Fire.
something that Cassie was first at, though, because
Yeah,
people always say that she copies Harry Potter, but she was first.
Yeah,
they're
that's
just
what
little
she's saying.
things
She
I
took
love.
like, not that Fantastic Beasts necessarily took inspiration from City Friendly Fire. Okay, but like,
Who knows?
like Cassandra Clare probably took inspiration from Harry Potter with like that scene in the big battle, but then like it does come full circle, which I thought is really cute.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. Did someone else say something that they wanted to say a question or something? No? Okay. Oh, the one thing that the two quick things. One, Jace accepting the Herondale name and like saying he wants to be a Herondale, and then Tessa giving Clary the Herondale ring.
Yes.
So cute. I love it. So
I
much.
cried so bad, like, hearing Tessa talk about Will with Jem and everything. Like, because I cry at the end of Clockwork Princess, like everyone. But, like, it's kind of like, it's more what she feels afterwards that makes you cry than him
Yeah.
actually dying. Being in her head is what really makes you feel really emotional, because it's like, what if I lost a person that means that much to me? Because, like, I'm in a 5-year relationship, and, like, I just like think about like how I'm used to sleeping next to him and like how she reaches over and stuff, and it's just really sad.
Yeah, I totally agree.
When they're at the wedding, her and Jem are talking, and Jem says he can feel that Will is happy the way that Jem was happy when he saw Tessa and Will together, and that just made me like so emotional. And then also when they're watching Jace play the piano, and she's like, "Oh, he plays Chopin really well," and
It's so
like,
cute.
it just bothered me that she didn't talk to him. Like, that's his grandma.
Oh my god. Alrighty. I think that really wraps up this live show. So thank you guys so much for watching and participating in the discussion. I loved all of your questions. I feel like we had such a fun time discussing this amazing book. And of course, thank you to my lovely co-host for joining me in this discussion. The next book that we are going to be chatting about on the live stream is the Bane Chronicles. So make sure you're getting that read before the next one comes in a week or so. But thank you guys so much for participating in the live show with me, and we will see you soon for the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.